realized that in a city like Portland, a lot of people come here to a city like this, and they maybe move from the suburbs or rural Oregon or Mississippi, or you meet people from all across the country who sometimes move here to get away from strict, judgmental, controlling, just some of the maybe shame-inducing prejudice that they experienced in their family or in their hometown or in a religious community. And they come here because it's a place that's a lot more liberated. It's a lot more free. You can kind of just be you, do whatever you want. And so that is the mentality. But part of the reason why we started Counterculture is to say that Christian culture and Jesus culture aren't always the same thing. And that Jesus is different than the misrepresentations, the distortions, the corruptions that maybe sometimes you've experienced. I am convinced that if you met the real Jesus, or even you encountered him deeply and fully in Scripture, you would find him captivating. You would find him beautiful. You would find him stunning and challenging and gentle and kind. And so we started this church to be a counterculture to the church, to the way religious people can sometimes operate, and the way just pride can rear its ugly head, and judgment can rear its ugly head in just the human heart in general. But we didn't only start Counterculture to go against religious systems. We also started Counterculture to go against mainstream secular culture, because there are distortions there. And when it comes to a topic as loaded and as fraught as sex, I really think you would have to agree that when you look around out at the world and you see the things that were revealed by the brave survivors in the Me Too movement, or you hear about how Pornhub has allowed millions upon millions of people to view child sexual assault material, or when you learn about the sex trafficking that takes place in our city in hundreds of massage parlors unwillingly, with women brought here from other countries, or when you even look at the wreckage in your own life, I don't think anyone looks around at mainstream culture and goes, "Great work, everybody. Things are going fine. Keep up the good work." Like nobody thinks that. If we're honest with ourselves, there is brokenness and distortion and dysfunction, not only in the way church can be judgmental or have the wrong purity culture or whatever, but that there really is just brokenness across the board, across the map. Now, my intent with this message and the title today is Singleness, Sex, and Romance. My intent with this message isn't to answer every question. That could be a whole series in and of itself. That could be a dissertation. The goal isn't today to be exhaustive. The goal is to show you that the biblical vision is attractive. That's my intent. To show you that God's actual design and desire really is beautiful, and that it is attractive, and that it is compelling. So would you read with me in the Song of Songs? So it's kind of like the King of Kings or the Holy of Holies. It's saying this is the ultimate song, all right? This is like top of the charts, double platinum. They're just like banging this in ancient Jerusalem or something, just like crazy. So we'll start in verse 3 of chapter 8. This is actually the end of the poem. His left arm is under my head. His right arm embraces me. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, don't arouse or awaken love until it so desires, or virtually every other translation renders that until it pleases. Who is this coming up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? Under the apple tree I roused you. There your mother conceived you. There she who was in labor gave birth to you. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, and jealousy as unyielding as the grave. It burns like a blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, it would utterly be scorned. Would you pray with me? God, I pray that we would see a beautiful, compelling, healing, I dare say, vision of your desire, God. That you are not ever coming to shame us, to humiliate us, to degrade us, but you're coming to call us into something that is deeply, profoundly, and richly fulfilling, and that ultimately points to something that's available to everyone, regardless of their relationship status, regardless of if they ever get married, that you're inviting us into a love that really does satisfy, like that first song that we sang. And so I pray that you'd be in this room, that there any sense of dread or condemnation, or just that all of that would be completely just blown away, stripped away, and that we would hear just a gentle word from your Spirit. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, the Song of Songs, that's from the Old Testament, and it's in like the poetry, the wisdom literature. It's more so in the tradition of Solomon. Like, it's kind of like the school of Plato, right? It's like the school of Solomon. This poem comes, and it's ancient poetry. We're reading poetry from 3,000 years ago. And when you read it on the surface, if you take it like too literally, this is what you get. Like if you take time to read the Song of Solomon, he's like, oh, your teeth are like sheep in the field, and your neck is like a mighty tower of Jerusalem. It's just like weird. But you got to remember, this is poetry, all right? Like don't think of it as whatever this is. Like when he's saying like, hey, your tongue is like honey, we all know what he's saying. Like you're like he's just laying down some bars. That's what he's doing. And so get that out of your mind. But we can go away and go get just realize he's speaking poetically, and it is funny though, because the scholars, they own up to the fact that like he is using they're using extremely graphic, like sexual language in some parts of this. And it's actually funny reading these like crusty old dry scholars, and they're trying to put things like in the most sterile clinical terms that they can as they like write their commentaries and whatnot. But here's this celebration at the heart of the Bible, this celebration of the gift of pleasure and romance and just passion. And it's just this 8 chapters just reveling in it, delighting in it. And you're like, what is this doing in the Bible? This is not what I thought of when it came to the Bible. But what I want you to leave here with is a different view of desire and a different view of the Bible. That's what I'm inviting you into, that you leave here with a different perspective on passion, a different perspective on romance, and also a different perspective maybe than you had on God. So the first thought we're going to see from this passage is really from the book of Song of Solomon in general, and just from Christian theology in general, is that your desire can point you higher. Your desire can point you higher. Now, a lot of people don't get this. They think that, Christianity's one message is desire's bad. It's dirty. It's wrong. Don't talk about it. Maybe to procreate and have babies, that's the only time it's okay. That's the perspective. But Song of Solomon blows that to smithereens. Bertrand Russell said this, famous atheist, one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. The worst feature of the Christian religion is its attitude towards sex. A couple centuries before him, the atheist Marquis de Sade, which we get BDSM from his name, sadism, abandoning belief in God is the first step to unleashing the genitals and enjoying life. So, hey, you want to enjoy life? You want to have fun? And I think a lot of people in Portland would agree with that. I think there's buildings here in downtown dedicated to that premise, dedicated to that proposition. And a lot of your coworkers, a lot of your friends, maybe they wouldn't say it to your face, maybe they would, but they think, if I become a Christian, it's going to be repressive, it's going to be suffocating, it's going to be restrictive, it's going to drain the pleasure and passion out of my life, and that's why I want nothing to do with it. And so that is the perspective that a lot of people would have. But Song of Solomon comes and blows that to smithereens. It says, no, pleasure, passion, joy, it's actually good. It's actually a gift. It actually comes from God. God is the maker and the creator of pleasure. Look at verse 3, and then we'll jump down to verse 5. His left arm is under my head. His right arm embraces me. We're in mixed company, and so I'm not going to be graphic, but a lot of the scholars say that verse 3, there's some spicy stuff going on in there. But then jump down to verse 5. Who is this coming up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? Under the apple tree I roused you. There your mother conceived you. There she who was in labor gave you birth. What he's talking about apple trees is this. Apples in the ancient world were seen as an aphrodisiac. This is like chocolate and red wine. This is like filet mignon and oysters. This is like Henny and a Coke. Right? like this is cognac. He's pulling out he's getting down to business under the apple tree is what's going on. That's the metaphor that is it's bringing up. And so there's all this poetic language throughout it. But what you begin to notice if you pay attention is that these aren't just arbitrary metaphors. There's something deeper and richer going on. And the people who compiled all of these documents of the Hebrew Bible, they knew exactly what was going on. And that's that all throughout this poetry, there are garden images. There are echoes of Eden. Throughout the entire thing, it's all echoes. The whole Bible is a unified story. It's all interconnected. And Song of Solomon is riffing back to the beginning of the Bible. The Bible starts off with a garden paradise where God creates us, and it's this lush, perfect place of peace and pleasure and plenty. That's how the Bible starts off. And we go wrong where we only focus on the snake and we only focus on what we're wrong. The Bible actually starts off with God speaking like an artist, speaking like a chef, dare I say, speaking like a lover. And what does he say? He says, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's so good. Now, I'm going to make somebody nervous right now in this room, but that's how the Bible starts off. It's God celebrating pleasure. It's saying, eat from all the trees of the garden. That's the first command. The first commandment in the Bible is eat from everything. Just go to town, go crazy on all the fruit. That's the first command God ever gives. God is celebrating all this life and light pleasure. But then we reject God's vision. That's the story of Adam and Eve we're probably more familiar with. We reject God's vision. We say, no, we want to do things our way. We're going to make our own paradise, our own version of paradise. And then we end up east of Eden. We end up in exile where there's violence and bloodshed and suspicion and hatred and animosity and power plays and exploitation. And so the story goes on and on. But how does the Bible end? I've shared this with you before. The Bible ends with God restoring paradise, with the union of heaven and earth, where Jesus is united with his people, where we don't go up to heaven into some ethereal thing where we play harps and strings and float on clouds. No, read the last chapters of the Bible. It's heaven on earth. It's paradise regained. It's paradise restored. You could see the entire Bible as a path back to paradise, a path back to this place of peace and prosperity and pleasure. What I'm trying to tell you is that God is not the enemy of your pleasure. God is the inventor of your pleasure. God is not the joy and delight and laughter and fun and just ecstasy and bliss. That all comes from God. And I want you to think of something you really enjoy, all right? Could be anything. Could be your favorite meal that you eat, your favorite place to go in the gorge. It could be your favorite person to be with, just anything. Those things are meant to point you to the one who made them. That's the idea. They're meant to draw us up, that the music that you yearn for. There's a theologian who says, I never trust a preacher who doesn't like art and music and literature. You should be suspicious of them. And that actually goes back to St. Augustine. Now, I got to tell you about St. Augustine because the name saint might throw you off, all right? This is a North African guy. We'll put a quote on the screen for you. I'll get to the quote in a minute. I just want to tell you about him. He's a North African guy, and this guy was a brilliant philosopher. He was a pagan, right? A Roman citizen. And he was just a genius. He was a savant. He knew it inside and out, and he was very popular with the ladies, okay? This guy was not just a snack. He was a whole meal, all right? He was a scholar in the streets and a baller in the sheets. Like, that's how St. Augustine was, okay? But it left him empty. And his most famous quote is he goes, "You have formed us for yourself, and our hearts are restless till we find rest in you." All his success, all his education, all of his conquests in the bedroom, he said, I was empty, I was restless. I fell headlong into disorder and misery and ruin. But then he comes to Christ and he becomes one of the greatest theologians to ever live. And St. Augustine says this, if you find pleasure in bodily things, listen up, Portland. Listen up, everybody. If you find pleasure in bodily things, praise God for them and direct your love to their maker. The good that you love, think of that place in the gorge. Think of that meal. Think of that band you can't get enough of. Think of that TV series you just binge because it's just incredible. The good that you love comes from him. And when it is also loved for him, it is both good and sweet. But it will turn bitter if what comes from him is not loved rightly. Christianity does not invite you to love God instead of pleasure. Christianity invites you to love God as the author of pleasure. You see the difference? But what goes wrong is when we start to love pleasure instead of the author. That's where the world goes wrong. That's where the breakdown and dysfunction comes. He wrote that in his book Confessions, but in City of God, he has a different part where he's kind of talking about people who are real strict. Like imagine the monks who don't do anything fun, or the Stoics, or these Buddhists who they just deny all pleasure, right? He's talking about that, and he says this, a mind that cannot be touched by any emotion at all, is that not worse than all the vices? This is the greatest Christian theologian to ever live, arguably. And he says, a mind that can't have any pleasure or any joy or any emotion at all, is that not worse than all the vices? What I'm telling you is that perhaps that pastor or preacher or parent who is strict and harsh and ruthless and exacting may be in greater danger of hell than your friend who's on Grindr or Tinder or OnlyFans. Not because those things are good, but because desire is. Jesus said that. I mean, I feel like I have to back it up a little bit, but Jesus said to the Pharisees, he said, tax collectors and prostitutes are entering the kingdom of heaven ahead of you. What he said to the most strict religious group on the planet. See, your desire, let's just say you're a pleasure animal, you're a party animal, you're a hedonist, you just can't get enough of it. Your desire isn't the problem. It's just the direction you're sending that desire that's the problem. Don't try to squash those desires and quell them. Just redirect them. But he says in this passage, but it turns bitter when what comes from him is not loved rightly. And the truth is, in our world, it is not loved rightly. Modern society basically tells us that your sexual expression, your sexual identity is the most important thing about you. If it's not the most important thing, it's one of the most important things about you. Our culture tells us constantly, day and night, that sex is the meaning of life. I mean, there are actual songs and movies that just say that sex is the meaning of life. And that if somebody doesn't validate and affirm and cheer on your sexual expression, they might as well be telling you that you don't matter. They might as well be telling you that you shouldn't exist. They might as well be telling you that your existence is worthless. They say that sex is the meaning of life, that it's the most essential thing about your identity, that it's crucial. But here's the deal. Here's the problem. We all know that's a problem, because what happens to somebody who can't get a mate? What happens to an incel? What happens to somebody who they have all these desires, but they just can't ever gratify them? What happens to someone when the person they love, they've made their meaning in life? You're my everything. You're my world. You're my whole heart. You're my universe. You're my goddess. And they cheat on you and they break up with you. If that person's your meaning in life, what do? You want to go kill yourself. And sometimes people do. But it's not just in the world, it's in the church, right? Just substitute sexual identity and sexual expression for getting married and having a family. And it's in the church, purity culture, that the meaning of life is getting married and having a family, right? But the Bible says no. It says sex is a good thing, but it's not an ultimate thing. Sex is not the meaning of life. Ultimately, you can live a fulfilled, happy, joyful, purposeful life without ever getting married. Jesus never got married. Paul the Apostle never got married. And what's really liberating about this is that there are people in this room, and there are people who either through their own desires or just because the way they were born and the way things are, they're never going to get married. They're never going to find a soulmate. And our culture, according to them, implicitly says you're of less value. You're less human. If you're not satisfying those desires, you are not human. But Christianity came along in a traditional culture that idolized both sex and the family, because all traditional cultures tend to idolize the family. And Jesus comes, and he never gets married. And Paul comes, and he never gets married. And for a lot of church history, single people were varsity, and married people were JV. For a lot of church history, that's how it was. So it turns all of our idols on their head. So it just changes everything. And ultimately, we're talking about that union of heaven on earth, right? Paradise regained, Christ and his church, God and his people, that the marriage is meant to be this movie trailer, this Trader Joe's sample, but that the second coming is the meal, right? That union with God, that heaven on earth is the feature film, and marriage and sex is only meant to be the trailer. Well, here's my encouragement to you. Have you ever seen like a 99% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes mind blower of a movie when you didn't see the trailer? I'll tell you what, I did that a little while ago. I'm just gonna be honest. It was Sinners. I never saw the trailer for Sinners, and I just walked into that theater blind, and having never seen, I didn't even know there was vampires in it. It was the greatest experience of my life. Like, it was crazy, And what I'm saying is that if God exists and if Jesus is risen from the dead, single people who never get married, man, it might even be better for you. You missed the trailer, but you're going to get the movie. You missed the Trader Joe's sample, but you're going to eat the full meal. It's going to blow you away. So the Bible actually has a very high view of both marriage and of singleness, but our culture tends to kind of say, your sex drives everything. It's who you are. It's the center of your identity, and that's a problem. All right, so speaking of problems, the next thought is, when desire is excessive, it is destructive. When desire is excessive, it is destructive. Your problem is not that you crave paradise. Bruno Mars was kind of on the right track, actually. Like, your problem is not that you want, what do we all want ultimately? I mean, a lot of us, we do want adventure, we want success, but I think on some level, we all want a life that's all pleasure and no pain. We want a life that's all peace and no strife. We want a life of plenty and prosperity, not a life of scarcity and lack. And I think a lot of times in religion, you think, oh, no, you're a bad person if you want prosperity. You're a bad person if you want. No, 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 no. You were made for paradise. What if the reason why we all want that pleasure-filled, peace-filled life is because we really were made for that kind of world? But the problem is when we try to get back to the garden on our own terms. When we try to get back there and we want it so bad, we want pleasure so bad, we're willing to trample over God and people to get it. That's what makes the headlines. That's what everybody's up reading the files about, is people who've done that. People who said, I don't care I don't care what I have to do, who I have to hurt. I'm going to get that pleasure. I'm going to get that prosperity. I'm going to get that life. That's where things go wrong. Look at verse 4. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not or arouse or awaken love until it desires. Now we're going to put up the New Living Translation. Yeah, there we go. Promise me, O women of Jerusalem. And I read tons and tons and tons of translations this week, and virtually all of them agree with the New Living Translation, and so do a lot of the commentators, or all the commentators that I read. Promise me, O women of Jerusalem, not to arouse love until the time is right. Now, people laugh at this, right? This is we don't like this. This verse bothers us. There's a whole podcast made about how churches have done this wrong, and that's valid, and that's fair. But our culture basically says the time's always right. Any time is a good time. Any time's a good time for a good time. That's the approach people have. I think of Mike Myers in Wayne's World. They hand him a form. Sex? Yes, please. That's the mentality of our culture. It's just skin. It's just skin on skin. What's the big deal? It's just sex. It's just like eating. It's just an appetite. We all need to eat. We all need to drink. We all need to, that's the attitude of our culture. We take it that way. But I think deep down, we know that that's not the whole picture. Because if it's just, all it is eating, all it is just skin, all it is contact, why does it hurt so much when you've been sleeping with someone and you find out they're cheating on you? A little bit different than them sharing a bagel with somebody, isn't it? Now, why is it that when you've been intimate and you've given yourself to somebody and then you break up, why does it hurt so horribly? Why is it so painful? Put it another way. Obviously, consent wasn't always a buzzword, by the way. In the 60s, consent wasn't a big word. But we realized, we need to amend the sexual revolution. Now consent has become a big word. But if it's just skin on skin, if it's just a physical appetite, a physical activity, why is it that sexual assault is so much more destructive than just normal assault? Sure, it hurts to get punched in the face, but it hurts a lot worse. There's something deeper there, isn't there? Something else going on. Your boss can ask you to work overtime for a promotion, but if your boss asks for something else for a promotion, a little different, right? The Bible's view of sex is that we are not meant to give ourselves to anyone physically unless we are willing to give ourselves to them totally. That sex is meant to be an expression, a symbol, a celebration of wild abandon, of saying, I love you so much, I'm giving my entire self to you. I'm vulnerable with you physically because I'm vulnerable with you totally. I'm giving myself to you physically just like I give myself to you emotionally, just like I give myself to you financially, just like I give myself to you spiritually, just like I give myself to you permanently. I'm giving my whole self to you, and it's this celebration, and you're giving yourselves to one another, and it becomes beautiful. It becomes profound. It becomes deep, where your physical union is an expression of your total union. And think about how romantic that is. Two people saying, I love you so much, I'm giving you it all. I'm just giving my entire self to you. Man, it's powerful. But what happens in our world basically instead is people go, I know I want your body, but I might not want your soul. What people say. And it's not just Christians who are noticing this. So check out this sociologist. This is a sociologist named Eva Illouz, and she's critiquing capitalism. And she is talking about romance, and she wrote a whole book about romance and how capitalism has infiltrated our view of relationships. And she goes, capitalism is characterized by an entire cultural mindset in that exchange relationships, that is, buying and selling, have permeated most of society. Internet dating has encouraged people to act as shoppers, demanding and comparing alternatives, constantly trying to get a better deal. I mean, in the mentality, I think we can't deny this, right? That even people, once they're married, they have the mindset of like, well, I'm with you here, but a better model comes around, I don't know. See what the return warranty is, like just that mentality, but we're treating people like objects. And I love what it says in verse 7, if one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, it would be utterly scorned. What it's saying there is saying real love can't be bought. That real profound love of devotion and reckless abandon and total commitment, that kind of love, it can't be purchased. It doesn't come in this consumer capitalistic mindset where I treat you like an object that I'm trying to get the best one that I can for how much money I have. Maybe I can't, maybe you're a little out of my league, a little out of my price range, and I'll settle for this. But if a better one comes along, we're treating each other like objects. We're treating each other not like children of God, not like people who are made in God's image, not like people have infinite worth and infinite dignity. And you go, well, yeah, sure, I'm using him, but he's using me, or we're using each other. Maybe you're both using each other. Yeah, but you're using each other. That's the point. And I think a place where this comes up a lot, and I'm hoping that Eva can kind of back me up here, right? Because here in Portland, we don't like capitalism, right? We don't like greed. We don't like exploiting people for profits. We don't like the consumer mindset. Portland is very much against capitalism. But I think if we could just have the critique on ourselves and be honest, because I understand the tendency to go, well, we need to sleep together before we get married, just like you kind of need to test drive a car. It's a big purchase. It's a huge commitment. I'm going to be paying off this car for the next 10 years. I want to try it before I buy it. But you're still treating the individual like an object, not like a person. You're not treating them like an image of God. And I can tell you, as somebody who's been married for 16 years, you are constantly having to adapt to one another. Your preferences change, your abilities change. Sometimes you're going to have injuries, and you're always going to have to accommodate to one another. It's never going to be like, oh, I found my perfect purchase and boom, got it. It's like, no, that's like shooting at a moving target, because you're always going to have to adapt. Life's always going to be throwing curveballs emotionally and chemically and circumstances-wise and injury-wise and all kinds of things. You're never going to find that right person. Something I didn't share from St. Augustine that I think is absolutely crucial is that in that same section of Confessions, he says that our real problem deep down is that rather than loving the author of pleasure, we love pleasure. But pleasure can never give us what the author can. And what I'm saying here is that you will always be disappointed by your spouse. You will always be frustrated by your spouse. You'll always be breaking up with that partner, leaving relationships, ghosting people, going on the dates, and then moving on, if you think that person can satisfy your deepest longings. If you think that person can make your life meaningful. If you think that person can make life worth living. you will idolize that person, and then they'll disappoint you and you'll demonize that person. But what you need to do is you need to find your deepest, richest joy and satisfaction in God, who is the author of all good and all peace and all pleasure. And then as you find your peace and your joy and your significance and your worth in Him, you are then able to enjoy the good things that He gives. All right, so final thought today is that, okay, I actually have to share this book with you. This is so important. I can't move on. It's so worth it. If like you purchase this book, I will feel like this whole sermon was worthwhile. Because you can listen to me, some white guy up here who's married, talk about all this, right? And you're like, yeah, whatever, man. but listen to what Louise Perret says. So she was a feminist for a long time, a feminist. She still is a feminist, but she was big in the feminist movement in the UK. But then she kind of had this realization. She wrote this book. She's still secular, by the way. She's not a Christian. You should buy this book on today. Go to Powell's, go to Amazon. You should buy this book. Hookup culture is a terrible deal for women. Studies confirm most women experience regret, low self-esteem, and mental distress after a hookup. Cultural pornification treats people as fungible. This is the same thing Eva was saying. It's fungible, right? It treats them as replaceable and interchangeable. You're merely a collection of body parts. And then she goes on, surprisingly, this is at the end of the book, surprisingly, unmarried women are at greater risk for domestic violence than married women. Think about it. I mean, you have your community scope out the guy, and hopefully you can find a guy who's a man of God, whatever. But if you're bringing all kinds of guys in, think about the variables that you're introducing into your life over and over and over again. There's more domestic violence for women who are unmarried. It's crazy. Then an astounding book. So when desire becomes excessive, it becomes destructive. Our final thought today is desire with devotion is God's vision. Verse 6 and 7, place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death. Its jealousy is unyielding as the grave. It burns like blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all the wealth in the world, his house for love, would it not be utterly scorned? Don't you want that? Don't you want someone that devoted to you? Don't you want someone who loves you at your worst and wants to help you be your best? Don't you want someone who, when the floods and fires of life comes, they don't bail on you and bounce? Wouldn't you like someone who's going to love you to your old and gray, love you even to the grave? Wouldn't you love someone who's going to be there with you to go to your surgeries, to go to pick up your prescriptions, when life's difficult? I mean, we all crave that kind of commitment, someone who loves us to the depths. And I want to just make it abundantly clear, God's vision for sexuality is two followers of Jesus devoted to one another, serving each other, finding their joy in God first and in each other second, forgiving each other, growing together, slowly, gradually cultivating a preview of paradise. And I want to challenge everyone in here to say, if that sounds good to you, if you want God's vision in your marriage, why not follow God's vision before your marriage? If you want His vision later, it's not going to help you get to there by ignoring His vision now. That's my invitation. But if that brings any shame to you and you go, oh, I feel racked with guilt, this whole sermon has been like a root canal, I feel like I'm at the dentist, and if you're feeling that right now, I just want to remind you that Jesus is really the one who loves like that. Jesus is the one who sees you at your worst, but still gives you His best. Jesus is the one who fire and flood couldn't quench His love. Jesus is the one who loved you to the grave. And you have not broken through to Christianity till you've exchanged fear and guilt for faith and gratitude, till you've gone from shame to surrender, till you've gone from judgment to rejoicing, till you've gone from condemnation to connection. Jesus loves you. There's not an ounce of condemnation left for you. He bore it all on the cross. He looked the woman caught in the act of adultery in the eyes and said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." And I also want to say this. It's been a lot to process, right? And very countercultural, obviously. And I want to say God's patient, and counterculture is going to be patient. We're gentle. I am in no way giving you permission to just go sin, but I am giving you this. I'm giving you permission to struggle. I'm giving you permission to ponder. I'm giving you permission to question. I'm giving you permission to wrestle. I'm giving you permission to think. And we will be a patient, gentle church I just want to completely take the pressure off, but I want to send an invitation out. So I'll have the band come back on stage. This is my invitation I want to extend to you. This is my invitation for you to believe, to pray, and to live. Comes from Psalm 119. This is the path to paradise, guys. Make me walk along the path of your commands, for that is where my happiness is found. How I delight in your commands. How I love them. You are good, and you do only good. Teach me your decrees.